So we're getting to the end of our mite treatment period. We're going to start doing some mite washes to see how effective it was. This particular yard has only been treated twice, and it was an overwintered yard. It wasn't started from nukes or queen cells or any of that business, so of all of our yards, this would probably have the highest mite load of any. The last Apigaurd video has generated some comments that were reoccurring. It's interesting how, we get comments on the YouTube channel, and then also people come into our store and ask questions about what they saw. And the three reoccurring questions have been about absconding and feeding and how effective it was. Some people seem to have problems with Apigaurd not being real effective for them. As far as absconding, I've only had a major issue with that one time when I was in South Georgia. It's really before I understood the mechanism of Apigaurd very well. It was about 95 degrees, and I treated about 300 colonies with a full dose, 50 grams of Apigaurd, and it trashed a bunch of colonies basically, because I don't know if you would call it absconding as much as it might be better to say they were escaping. I didn't realize that the instructions said 50 grams, and I just did what the instructions said, and I didn't realize that in excessive heat that would be too much. Gave those 300 colonies 50 grams, and they pretty much exited the box. Most of them were hanging out on the side of the box. Some were under the pallet. I actually saw some colonies that were building comb under the box, or under the pallet, I should say. That was pretty interesting to see. The bees just couldn't take it at that temperature. And another interesting fact about that episode is that it didn't seem to bother the hive beetles at all. Most of the colonies had exited their box, and the hive beetles just took over and slimed things terribly. It really ruined all 300 colonies. And then the other thing, of course, I have a habit of feeding at the same time as I treat, and on that occasion that wasn't such a good idea because there was nobody in there taking the feed, and the feed dripped down on the landing boards and it caused robbing and stuff. I generally, and actually that leads to the next question that we seem to be getting over and over, and that is about feeding at the same time we treat. And except for that episode, I don't have an issue with it. I fed at the same time I treated with Apigaurd thousands and thousands and thousands of times, and it's just not an issue as long as the colony hasn't exited the box and absconded or something like that. I'll put a link to the manufacturer's website talking about absconding and feeding at the same time. They have some interesting takes on that. When they address the question of feeding at the same time as treating, they say the answer is both yes and no, and their reasoning is interesting. They talk about if you're feeding at the same time that you treat, that the bees get preoccupied with the feed and they don't touch or try to remove the Apigaurd as much. That's not been my experience at all. It's very interesting how so many beekeepers have different experiences. I know several commercial beekeepers that use Apigaurd, and they feed at the same time also, and they've never reported any issues with doing that. Anyway, I'll put a link to that website and maybe a quote up in the video talking about that a little bit. Let's see, the third question. Oh, how effective it is. I think it's a matter of understanding the temperatures and the quantities. Quite often you hear that you should give them a half a dose if it's a little warm, and I think in many cases people are giving them a half a dose when maybe it should have been closer to a full dose because it's not really too hot. We've given everybody, all of our colonies this year, the double deeps have all received a full 50 gram, or you could call it a 50 milliliter dosage with zero issues. I think it's been very effective. And then all of our singles have been getting a 30 gram dose, and I think it's been pretty effective. We're going to do some mite washes in this yard because, as I stated, this yard is, if there's going to be still some remaining mites in any of our yards, it'll be this one because it only got treated twice. Now, another thing that people need to understand is if you treat them and you come back 5 or 7 days later and do a mite count, you could have you could get a incorrect reading because you really have to kind of wait till the brood is hatched that was sealed at the time you treated. This yard has been 18 days. We just looked at our book to see what calendar date we were here, and it was 18 days ago that we were here, which is a long time. That's plenty of time for the brood to hatch, so all of the mites would have come out of that brood, and we should get a correct reading on our mite count here. Seth is the official mite roller these days, so we'll let him do the work. Again, we'll find him some brood that is generally open brood. That's where you'll find most of the mites. And again, we're using the Easy Check kit, and 90% alcohol, 70% works too. So let's get to work and figure out if we need to treat again or not. Here, John, check this out. Get real close. These bees really don't like this stuff. You can see how this card got propolized in place. Yeah, and you also notice that the card is offset. We never put the card right under the hole where the bucket feeder is going to be. You don't want that feed dribbling down on your thymol. The bees really stay away from it at first. You know, sometimes you come back the next day and you'll see a circle around your treatment where the bees are just not there. They kind of stay to the other end or the sides of the box, and that's something to be aware of when you're feeding with buckets. You can't put it right over the thymol. You need to put it on in such a way that the bees can access it and they're not repelled away from the feed because of the thymol treatment. This brood looks great. They've gotten back to rearing brood again. Something I'm really liking to see right now is this pollen in this comb. Can you see that in the camera, Tom?
Yeah.
3 or 4 weeks ago, these bees didn't have any pollen in the comb, and now suddenly they've got plenty. The goldenrod is just starting to bloom. The helianthus has been blooming for a couple of weeks. So that's a big part of brood production. And as is our habit in situations like this, I always like somebody else to double check the frame. None of us is foolproof when it comes to spotting queens, and I'm no exception. Look at that, that's a nice frame of brood, John.
Yeah.
They look really healthy.
Steffi, take me to the long horse for lunch.
Zero.
Zero. That's what I like to hear, 0.
Yes, sir.
And we'll use this, just like I said in the last video, we'll use this alcohol over and over until it's too messed up.
Yep, 0.
0, perfect.
Yeah, 0.
0. Double 0. We'll check a few more, and as long as we keep getting that, I'm happy. 2 treatments seem to have done the job in this yard, and of course, almost all of our yards will be checked. I like to counsel people, don't ever just accept the idea that whatever you did worked. Don't just assume your treatments worked. I highly recommend getting some way of checking for mites when you're finished and making sure that you're going into winter with a real low mite load. So if we get a few more 0s or 1s or something like that, we'll know we're done treating in this yard. We'll just go through every single colony and kind of do an assessment. This will be the last time we really dive into the brood nest and check things out and make sure a colony's in good shape. These larger colonies, if they're full of bees and we get into the brood nest and see a couple of frames of brood, we're happy, we're done. What we really look for is when we pop a lid, if we see a low population of bees, or I don't know, something just doesn't look right, we'll dive into the brood nest and really look closely. This is our last chance to make an assessment on the queens, the quality of the queen, how she's doing. And it takes a lot of time to do that end of the season assessment, but I find that I have a much better overwintering percentage if we just give them one last check before we assume everything's, you know, on the fast track for winter.
The brood looks fine though. That looks healthy. You want to double check me, Bob?
Yeah, 0. Promise.
I don't know. I honestly didn't expect nothing but 0s in this yard, but apparently that's what we're getting. We are done treating. 2 treatments was very effective apparently. I'm happy. We're just going to open up every colony, check them for weight, make sure the queens are doing a decent job, they have plenty of bees, and move on to the next yard.
Yeah.
This one, John?
Yeah, no, she's doing really well.
Okay.
Like really well.
Okay. That's all we need to see. We see a couple frames like that, we're happy. That one looks pretty good.
I'm making sure she's not on this lid right now.
So this queen doesn't have a very good pattern. Not as many bees as we like to see in a colony, so that's why we're replacing her. This time of year we like to use these push-in cages. We make them out of 1/8 inch hardware cloth. They're not hard to make. This one's about 3 inches by 4 inches. It's about 1 inch high, and we just fold it into a block. We cut out this little door where we can release the queen into the inside of the cage and then shut the door, and we push it all the way to the center of the frame so the bees can't burrow under it and get her out of there. That's one of the good things about plastic foundation. If you use a push-in cage on wax foundation, a lot of times the bees will burrow from the back side and release her prematurely. But as long as you push this against the plastic foundation, they can't do that. And we've got a really good spot for putting this cage right here. I don't know if you can see this, John. See, I've got bees that are hatching right now. That's the perfect place to put a push-in cage, because as these bees hatch, they will instantly accept this queen as their own queen. They don't know any different. And then what's really great is right beside that patch we have some empty cells, so the queen can start to lay right away. And she lays in here for a while, and some of these bees hatch and treat her as their own. In about 4 or 5 days we can just pull the cage off and just let her go to the general population. So here you go, Seth. I'll hold the frame. You go ahead and put that cage in there. I'd put it right here. Sometimes it takes a few seconds before she figures out the door is open. Okay, she's in the cage. Okay, perfect. She's in there by herself now. These bees are hatching. It's a perfect scenario. The other thing you have to watch out for is what you put against this cage. The next comb, you don't want to press brood against this cage. You want to even be careful about pressing honey against this cage. Ideally, you'd want some empty comb against it. If you don't put something against it, this cage can kind of come loose as the bees chew around it. So something has to be against it to keep it from coming off of that midrib. We'll find the perfect comb to get against it. Okay. This is a good one. There's nothing in this comb, so we can push this right against the cage. Okay. I'm not going to say that this push-in cage is foolproof, but it's the best way I know of introducing a queen without extra equipment like extra boxes and things. I've had really good luck with it, and every queen that we introduce this fall, we'll use a push-in cage. We've got a whole box of them. Takes a little more time, it's a little more effort, but queens are expensive. I don't want to lose any if I can help it. Okay, there's a reoccurring theme in this yard, and that is that all the colonies that are not doing well are queens from last year. This is one of the yards left that we still haven't replaced all the queens. I'd say 2/3 of this yard is new queens, and every time we are running across a colony we're not happy with, every single one of them has been a queen from last year. That's one of the reasons that I like to replace queens every year. Now Jesse just found one that was doing a great job. It was a queen from last year. We can tell because it has a blue dot on it. I told him to replace her too, even though she's doing a really good job, because next spring and moving into next summer, she's going to be beyond middle-aged, and I want to replace her now while we have this chance. That's just our way of doing it. It's not something everybody has to do. It's just our way. Thanks, John.
Yes, sir.
Zero.
Yeah, this yard's turning out just like the last one. We haven't found a mite yet. It doesn't mean we don't have any. It just means we're in good shape. We have a very low count. So, although this yard's only had 2 treatments, it will not get any more this season. We'll catch it again in November, December with oxalic acid vaporization when they're broodless. We're almost done with this yard, and we haven't had to replace but just 1 queen so far, which is actually a surprise. Even though these queens were all brand new this spring, we usually have to replace a couple in a yard before going into winter, sometimes more than that. Just because a queen is from the current year doesn't guarantee that she's perfect and will be a good queen going into winter in the next spring. We don't hesitate to replace a queen even if she's just a few months old, if she's not doing a good job. I see some helianthus over there in the back of the field blooming. It's been going for about 2 weeks. And then everything in the front here is all goldenrod, which is about ready to pop. It's perfect timing for the work we're doing. Making sure the queens are all good, assessing mite loads, finishing our treatments, and then the bees are all ready to start rearing the winter bees that'll have to get them through till next February and March. We're going to go into winter in healthy condition. I'm really happy with what I'm seeing. We carry around this box full of queens with us from yard to yard. These were harvested out of our own queen mating nukes last week. Should be enough to get us through the next 7 to 10 days as we move through the yards and check and requeen some. And then we have 1 more round of queen mating nukes that we can harvest about 2 weeks. That'll give us all the queens I think we need to get through the season.
Looks like she just got started again. I've got 3 frames full of eggs here.
Yeah, I think it happens a lot. The Apigaurd kind of shuts them down and they come back with a vengeance. Good looking pattern.
Yep. And all that right there is laid up. Everything that you see.
Which thinks that what we got?
We're halfway.
Zero. Okay. I'm just a little surprised at all these zeros. We haven't found a mite yet, right?
Nope.
Hmm.
That I've seen today. Here.
Zero?
Zero.
Okay. This Apiguard really worked for us. I'm a little puzzled when people say it doesn't work. I've always had pretty good luck with it. Most of the negatives about it are just like over treating when it's hot. Besides that, I've had zero issues with it. These bees have taken their feed well 2 times in a row. They still look good. Brood's coming back with a vengeance. Very healthy looking. I have no problems with Apiguard this year. So Jesse's gotten into a colony that's raising a bunch of drones, which is not normal for this time of year. We're going to check this for mites and take a real good close look at the queen. Pattern looks okay.
Pattern looks great.
Okay.
Okay, there it is. This is it.
What?
This is the right frame.
Oh, the right frame to shake? Okay.
Yeah. We got a bunch of open brood here.
Yeah.
Check me over. I don't make many mistakes, but you know. Look at that one.
Yeah, nice pattern for August.
One more count is 3.
We got a colony with 3 mites in here. And this is the colony that's raising drones, so that's very interesting. So 3 mites in an alcohol wash of 300 bees is really the threshold. That's what I would consider the limit. A colony with 3 mites at this point would probably be in no danger of crashing before we got our midwinter oxalic acid vaporization treatments on. But we're here. We've got the means to treat it one more time. So just this one colony in this yard is going to get treated. The rest are fine. We've gotten nothing but zeros all day long until we ran into this colony. I'm still feeling pretty good about everything. Propolis on this?
Yeah, they propolized the card perfectly.
Yeah, that's a lavish amount of propolis right there.
Yes, sir.
No messing around. See, scrape that off.
In there, but
That's the amount
That's what
of
you're
propolis they
looking
put
at.
around that one card. They did not like that. We're starting to see a lot of propolis show up. We actually bought 200 propolis traps we're going to put on our colonies as soon as we're done with all this treatment business, which should be by next week. Looking forward. I've never trapped propolis before. I'm looking forward to playing around with that. Okay, this yard was pretty good too. Nothing but zeros on the mite check. This is one spot I'm not surprised though. This yard has been split heavily this year. We probably pulled 3 or 4 splits out of every colony, and the last time we did it was about 2 months ago, and we requeened every colony with a cell. All of those brood break cycles really make a difference when mites are involved. Helps keep the mite count down. These colonies are in good shape for the winter. You'll notice that some of them have buckets and some don't. It's because some of them are starting to get fairly heavy. It's just the last day of August today, and it's too early to plug these colonies out before winter. We have to be careful not to get them too heavy while there's still time to rear brood. We'll plug them out pretty good in late September to mid-October, but for right now I want every single to have at least 3 or 4 frames open without food that they can rear brood on. Goldenrod pollen's going to start coming in here any day. This yard's going to get sold, or I should say it's for sale. I don't know if it'll get sold or not, but we have several yards of bees we're going to try to sell this fall. This is one of them. And either way, we're going to feed it very heavy before winter sets in.